Athletes of any sport have barriers that they want to break or times they want to beat. In running, a common one is getting that sub 4-hour marathon. Running a marathon is a challenge enough, but having a target time is a great way to stay focused and keep you motivated through the hours of training, because trust me, there are a lot of miles that you've got to run beforehand. Well, in this video, we're going to be guiding you through how to plan and prepare to be able to run 42.2 kilometers or 26.2 miles in less than 4 hours. Let's start by looking at pacing. In order to run a 4-hour marathon, you would have to hold a consistent pace of 9 minutes 9 seconds per mile or 5 minutes 41 seconds per kilometre. But obviously we want to go under 4 hours, and let's be realistic, you're probably not going to be able to run every single step of the way. And you also need to consider the fact that the second half is probably going to be slower than the first. Now, apparently, on average, runners who do a 4-hour marathon actually complete the first half in around 1 hour 52, and then the second half in around 2 hours and 8 minutes. On top of this, there's other things to consider, such as the aid stations and convenient breaks, but we're going to talk more on that in a moment. So I want you to actually target trying to run a 3-hour 55 marathon, as it gives you a little bit of leeway and it'll hopefully stop that frustration of coming in just under 4 hours. So in order to run that time or that target pace, you'd need to be hitting 8 minutes 58 seconds per mile or 5 minutes 34 seconds per kilometre. Before you get too excited, just because you can run a 9-minute mile doesn't mean you're ready to do a sub 4-hour marathon, because obviously you've got another 25 miles in which you'd have to hold that pace. However, if you do want a bit of a guide to see if you're on the right track, you can run a 10K, and if you're coming in under 52 minutes, as long as you're doing the long runs as well, that's a good guide to show that you're heading in the right direction. In the actual race, it's okay to walk small segments, and with the correct pacing, you can factor this in. And the plan I actually used was to walk in every aid station, so then you're making sure you're getting in enough hydration and fueling, but it also acts as a mental break. You can target running to the next one. And also, don't panic if you need the loo. 4 hours is a long time, but if you've targeted a 3-hour 55 marathon pace, you'll have a few minutes spare to play with. Being ready to run a marathon takes a structured training plan of at least 12 weeks, ideally 16 to 20 weeks, and that is only if you're already running regularly. Obviously, it does very much depend on what running base you're coming from as to how long you're going to need. Consistency is key when training for this distance, and having a plan and sticking to it is essential. The longer you have in which to build up your training, the less likely you are to get injured, so it just allows you plenty of time to start increasing the miles and allowing your body to adapt and strengthen. Well, going into the exact detail of what training you'd have to do for this distance is a video for another day, but there are plenty of training programs that you can find online. A common question is how far your longest run should be beforehand. If you are new to marathon running, the thought of running 26 miles is pretty daunting, and it can be tempting to try and run as far, almost as far, in your training. However, it's a good idea not to, because the damage and jarring on your body from that will actually detriment your training overall, as it takes such a long time to recover. So as long as you're following a structured training plan, then running 20 to 22 miles should be sufficient once or maybe twice in your build-up. And I must admit, before my first marathon, the longest I ran was 17 miles. And when I got to it in the race, I thought, oh my goodness, my legs aren't going to be able to go any further. But I managed to carry on for another 8 miles without too much of a problem. Getting the right equipment for training and racing this distance is vital. First and foremost, footwear. You're going to be spending hours in your training shoes, so you want to make sure that they're the correct ones for your running gait and also comfortable on your feet. If you do want a bit of advice on this, I'd suggest going to a reputable running store. And it's also worth noting how many miles you run in your shoes, because it's recommended that you change your training shoes every 300 to 500 miles or 450 to 600k. And once you've found a make and model of shoe that you like, it's worth considering buying a couple of pairs, wearing one pair in and then putting them aside for race day and using the other ones to train in. Whatever you do, do not buy a brand new pair of shoes and take them out of the box on race day. The same goes for the rest of your kit within reason. So experiment and find out what's comfortable for you and do at least a couple of long runs in it, because your pair of shorts, for example, might feel really comfortable for 10K, but 2 hours in them, it can be another matter. And you might have heard of runner's chafe. Well, petroleum jelly can solve most of those issues, but obviously you need to find out from doing your long runs what areas are susceptible to rubbing in the first place. On race day, you're likely to have a timing chip that will record your time, and many of the big marathons will have pacemakers, so you've got someone to actually help keep you on track for that target time. But when it comes to training, it is useful to be able to record the pace and time that you're running at. Now, some people purely use a phone for this, but having a basic watch is helpful, and if you can have something with GPS, it will just make sticking to that training plan that much easier. You need to address your nutrition long before race day. So work out what you like the taste of and what agrees with your stomach, and then practice with it. You'll have plenty of opportunities for this on your long runs. And it's actually worth investing in a nutrition belt or a small running backpack for your training runs, so you can carry your gels, bars, or whatever food you're choosing to use for your training. Food and calories are only one half of the puzzle though. Hydration is equally important, especially if you're racing or training somewhere hot. So you need to get used to drinking whilst you're running, and the key is to drink little and often, because you don't want to have a stomach full of liquid sloshing around. And on the other hand, you also don't want to wait until you're thirsty or dehydrated, because then it's too late. Make sure you have a nutritious meal the night before, so low in fibre, high in carbohydrates, and stick to the foods you know. And the same theme goes for breakfast on race day. So you could try something like porridge with nuts and honey, so you've got both quick and slow releasing energy. Just make sure though you've practiced this strategy with your long runs in training. And as for anything when it comes to a race, don't try anything new on race day. Make sure you arrive with plenty of time on race morning. You want to include a light warm-up, and remember to pack clothes for all weather conditions, because it's important that you stay warm before your race. And also factor in the time it'll take queuing for bag drop, for bathrooms, etc. And then onto the race itself. You're going to be excited and full of adrenaline. Enjoy it, but still try and remember to stick to your plan as much as you can. Well, all that leaves me to say is good luck with your sub 4-hour marathon, and let me know how it goes. You can do that in the comments section below. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. Hit the thumb up, like button if you have. And to make sure you get all our videos here at GTN, just hit the globe to subscribe. Now, earlier in the video, I talked about replacing your training shoes after a certain amount of mileage. Well, if you want more detail on how to know when you need to change your trainers, there's a video on that just here. And for something a bit shorter and faster, if you want a guide on how to run a sub 40-minute 10K, you can find that just here.